Welcome back, once again adventurers, to Let's Play Chaos Child. And in the last episode, Takuru Miyashiro said his final goodbyes to Aoba Dorm before departing with Hinai, Mio, Shinjo, Uki, Yuto, Kazuki unfortunately choosing to stay behind, however, but it was sayonara Shibuya, as everyone decided to make their way towards the city of Akihabara. Or so it would have gone at least, were it not for a last-minute phone call from none other than Serika Noe, who decided to give Takuru some very unfortunate news about his past, in that she was the one who murdered his parents 6 years ago, during the events that ultimately led to her own rebooted existence. And with that revelation in mind, Takuru decided not to go with the others to Akihabara, so no future gadget lab for us, boo. But instead, Takuru has endeavored to finish what he started so many months ago, to pursue this case right to its end and uncover the truth behind it, which means for Takuru going all the way to the Hikariwo Building and confronting not only Serika Noe, but also Wataru Sakuma, which basically means breaking both of Kurusu's promises in the letter. But, well, we already knew it was going to do that, didn't we? But yes, thinking back on what Shinjo was just saying, it is quiet here in Shibuya, despite the fact that there's supposed to be at least 80,000 people here. But it is almost 10:28 p.m., almost the hour of the memorial ceremony, which is where Sakuma will unleash the final part of his little drama theater, whatever you want to call it. Shinjo said, mostly to himself from the driver's seat. The Shibuya intersection was overflowing with people. They were all looking up the footage of Memorial Park being displayed on the big TV screens. The glare from the lights and the television screens making it seem a lot more brighter than it ought to be, considering the fact that it is nighttime. The time was 10:21 p.m. Only 7 minutes left. 7 minutes until the time when the earthquake began 6 years ago. When the time arrived, there would be a moment of silent prayer, and the festival would reach its finale. Everyone at the festival seemed to be heading for the park or the intersection in front of the station to participate. I could see a man who looked like a member of the city council on the screen. From the subtitles, he seemed to be giving a speech about the restoration project.
まただ。頭を下げろ。
And more people.
はい。
Of course, there'll be police looking around. Shinjo had gotten this car just to take us out of Shibuya. The windows were tinted, so I didn't have to worry about anyone seeing me. But there was no way to hide from anyone looking at me from the front. Just in case, I kept myself as far down in the space below the seat as I could. We'd run into a lot of roadblocks once we'd entered this area, with the volunteer staff stopping us from going forward. Each time Shinjo had shown his police notebook and explained that this was a police car, and each time they'd let us through. But that meant it was taking twice as long as usual.
ギリギリというか28分には間に合わんかもしれないぞ。
Maybe, maybe not, Shinjo said as he slowly weaved the car through the crowds of people.
いえ、送っていただくだけでありがたいです。
Well, to be fair, we never would have made it this far on foot, or without being discovered. I never would have made it to the Hikariwo on my own.
時間を過ぎれば佐久間と鉢合わせする可能性は高くなる。それでも行くんだな。
Indeed. Yeah. Even Sakuma wouldn't want his little performance to run out of his control.
はい。
I could see Shinjo's face in the rearview mirror. He put his fingers up to the bridge of his nose, and his expression was pained.
警察官としては最悪の行為だ。命の危険があるところに未成年を送り届けるなんてな。佐久間がシアターキューブにいるのなら一緒に乗り込んで拘束したいくらいだ。だが今の俺では佐久間の犯行を何も証明できない。
Unfortunately not, and also you don't have anything that could actually defend against his powers. Then again, with that said, neither do we, so...
上層部にも圧力がかかっている。まるで安物の刑事ドラマだな。
You know what, Shinjo? That analogy there, you're not wrong. This whole thing definitely does feel like a cheap detective drama. To be honest, it was, as morbid as this sounds, it was fairly intriguing at first. But now, the quality of effort has definitely slipped a few notches.
委員会っていうのはそんなに強い権力を持ってるんですか？
To answer your question, Takuru, the Committee of 300 does have quite a lot of influence and authority. But the real question is, will they actually do anything about Wataru Sakuma?
詳しいことはほとんど誰も知らない。いや、知った者は闇に葬られてきた。
Irritated, Shinjo swerved the car around a group of pedestrians that were standing in the middle of the street. I ducked down so I couldn't be spotted from the outside. It was a little cramped.
昼間言ってた新庄さんの先輩もですか？
I remembered him talking about that. About how this case was his way of avenging a detective he respected a lot. Well, if this eases your conscience, Takeshi Shinjo, Yajuriban's death was actually avenged 6 years ago by none other than Takumi Nishijo. Shinjo ignored me and kept looking forward. It felt like his silence was a yes.
なんだ
let it get to you. There's no way we could have been spotted. Shinjo lowered the window just a crack to hear what was going on outside.
どうした?もう終わっちまうぞ!ヘタレのレッテル貼られんぞ!宮代タクル!出てこいや!
What's wrong, Sakuma? Your little performance not going the way you planned?
酔っ払いか。
They're anything but, Shinjo. In front of us by the side of the road was a van advertising the Restoration Festival. A group of people had climbed up on top of it. They must have been college-aged, and they were holding beers in their hands.
情弱か。
Hearing them, or even seeing them was upsetting. I leaned back into the seat, closed my eyes and lowered my head again.
久野里さんもたまにそう言うな。
Shinjo closed the window and started to drive away from all the commotion. Come to think of it, it is probably entirely possible that Takuru actually learned that verbiage from Mio's internet persona K.
情弱、情報弱者の略だったか。
You're more clued in than you look there, Shinjo.
ええ。
I watched all the drunks pass by the other side of the tainted windows.
彼らは知らないし、知ろうとしないんです。自分たちが煽ってる相手のことも、その相手がどんな気持ちなのかも。
Indeed. There is another word for them besides wrong-siders. They're called sheeple. Or what the people talking about are going through. Violence, murder, the darkness in the human heart. They think they understand these things because they read or hear about them, but they don't ever think about what they must really be like. That's very profound of you there, Takuru.
君は会った時から知るという行為にこだわっていたな。
Well, you're not wrong. The first time I met Shinjo was after the
ラブホ
Love
テルの
Hotel
事件の時だ。
incident.
君たちが勝手に現場に入り込んでいた。
あ、
He was right. Shinjo was the one in charge of that case, and that was how we met.
これから尾上に会おうとしているのも何かを知るためなんだろう。
はい。
I had to know what Serika was really after, and the real reason she'd come into existence.
そうか。言ってみれば、自分のことを知るためなんだ。
What had I wanted during the earthquake? What wish had created her? I realized for the first time that I was trying to find out more about myself than Serika.
先輩もそんな人だったよ。
え?
I looked in the rearview mirror again. Shinjo was still watching the traffic in front of him.
とにかく知ろうとすることに対して貪欲な人だった。そのためなら世間の常識も警察の理屈も関係ない。
That he was. Unfortunately, at the end, he made a very fatal mistake.
よく百瀬さんに怒られていたらしい。突っ走りすぎだって。
I remember those days.
そうだったんですか。
Shinjo's voice took on a strangely different character. His tone changed from one of nostalgia to one of sorrow.
そして先輩は突っ走りすぎた。
That he did. That was the answer to his silence before, too. Had he been killed by the committee? The answer to that is no.
先輩の最後を俺はよく知らない。ただ先輩は満足だったろう。少なくとも後悔はしていないはずだ。
I know how he died. I've been pretty much spoiling it throughout this entire LP. Well, whenever it's been brought up. But, hate to burst your bubble there, Shinjo, but, Yasuji-ban did die with regrets.
でもな。だからといって先輩の死を認めるわけにはいかない。俺は先輩に追いつけなかったし、止めることもできなかった。俺は悔しいんだ。クルス・ノノさんがここにいれば、きっと同じように感じるはずだよ。君のこと。
Probably. In fact, she already has. She's been through that before. I felt silent. There was nothing I could say. But I was truly glad that he was the one who had read Nono's letter, and that he was the one who was helping me. And through the night we go. When I reached the Hikariwo, I realized that something was wrong. It was too quiet, almost as if we'd been expected this whole time. Normally, even at this hour, the Hikariwo would be fairly noisy, but it was completely silent. There were no murmurs, no drunken shouting, like I'd heard just a moment ago.
始まっちまったか。
I checked the time. Right on the dot. 10:28 p.m. Looks like it's showtime. Everyone had gathered in front of Memorial Park, or the TVs in front of the station for a silent prayer. Shinjo switched the car's navigation system to TV mode. It was displaying footage of the Memorial Park. I saw the ceremony and gasped. All the sound was gone from Shibuya. It was like a movie set. Suddenly I was struck by a terror even greater than before. It felt like the moment of silence was for me as I headed to my death. I forced myself to smile and tried to tell myself that I was shaking from excitement, from not fear. Well, you had your chance to turn back, and you chose not to take it. Too late to get cold feet now. My mind was a confused jumble of thoughts. Half of me wanted to go home and half of me wanted to stay, but I forced myself to keep going. That's right. I have to know, no matter what. Shinjo tossed something at me.
何ですかってこれ
I felt the sensation of rubber as I grabbed it. I tried to spread it out and stopped.
皮肉な話だが、手近にこれしかなかった。我慢してくれ。
いえ、ありがとうございます。
I lowered my head in thanks. There were still people standing between me and the theater cube.
すまないな。俺はここまでだ。ウキ君たちをそろそろ。
He looked at his watch.
分かってます。急いで彼女たちを秋葉へお願いします。
送り届けたら俺はすぐに戻ってくる。死ぬなよ。
はい。
Well, I'll have to see whether we can keep that promise. I wiped my sweaty hands off of my pants and nodded. Then I took a deep breath to calm myself down. I put on the sumo sticker mask that Shinjo had given me and stepped out into a Shibuya utterly without sound, as if somebody had pressed the mute button. The silent prayer was continuing, and this was my chance. Several people looked at me as I got out of the car, but they must have been used to seeing the people in the masks. They quickly lost interest and lowered their heads once more. Everything was fine. They hadn't figured out who I was, even though he's still wearing the Hikio Academy uniform. Figures. I looked up at the Hikariwo Building, which towered over me like some kind of fortress. The people around me all seemed suspicious, but I made it to the theater floor without anyone saying anything. But then I realized that something was wrong and stopped. Well, we can't go back now. Should have realized that before. There was no one on this floor. There were no customers, and not even a single employee. Even the convenience store, which was open during the festival, was empty. Nobody except us. I took off the mask. My field of vision restored, I took another look around the floor. I was right. It was completely empty. There was no sign of Serika or Sakuma either. The whole soundless space in front of me felt like a trap that I just walked into. But we were going to have to spring it sooner or later, like every trap. I'd taken the mask off, but it still hurt to breathe. And I hear footsteps. Oh, sorry, that's Takuru. His footsteps. I tossed the mask off into one of the decorative trees nearby and slowly started to walk across the floor. Every shadow scared me. Each time I reached a blind spot, I would stare at it a moment before I proceeded. It was the entrance to the theater.
Huh?
When I found the stairs and escalator, I felt a wave of nostalgia. This was where I'd come with the rest of Aoba Dorm. That's right. I'd gone up the stairs and into the theater. And that is the sound of the escalator. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I flinched as the escalator started to move.
脅かすなよ。
I think we have every reason to be scared. It was just the motion detector. I knew that. The machine seemed to be pulling me deeper into a trap. I looked up to the top of the escalator. There was no one there.
くそ。
I smacked my trembling legs with trembling hands, then slowly went up the stairs. Into the theater we go. This was the path that led to the theater. It was probably leading me to the finale that either Sakuma or Serika had prepared for me. And I was probably doing exactly what one of them had wanted. But I had to find Serika and the answer, and there was no way that desire was in anyone's script. It was my own, I thought. I had to find out the truth, for Nono's sake as much as my own. But even the best of scripts can often have a few ad-lib changes every once in a while. We need to watch out for those. I went up the entrance to the theater and put my hand on the heavy door. And on the other side. Yeah, this is the place. I felt a stabbing pain in my head the second I went inside. I staggered and leaned against the back of a nearby chair. I forced myself to endure the pain and look around the theater. The theater was done up in the modern style, with stadium seating. The stage was at the lowest point in the hall, and the seats got higher up the further you went away, so it would be easier for the audience to see. The entrance was at the far back, behind the seats. When I looked down, I could see the whole room. The stage was completely empty, a stage meticulously prepared for one Takuru Mashiro, for one night only. There were no props or backgrounds. The lights were focused on the stage, so the rest of the theater was dark and hard to see. The seats seemed empty too. I couldn't see anyone. Or maybe they're in the very expensive window seats. And by that I of course mean the seats that Statler and Waldorf frequented in the Muppet Show. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. I couldn't hear any movement either. My first suspicion was Sakuma's mind control power, which is a fair assumption. But if his power worked like ours, that meant he would need to share his delusions with me in order to reboot them. In other words, if what I was seeing was due to mind control, Sakuma must be watching me from somewhere nearby. I suddenly got an idea and looked through my pockets. I found the lollipop that Kazuki had given me. Well, if it can clear your head, why not? I tossed it up and imagined it floating in the air. But instead of floating, it fell down into the thin road between the seats. Well, if there was somebody else here, that delusion should have worked. I sighed with relief, satisfied with what I'd seen. I wouldn't relax just yet, however. We're still in danger. It was impossible for us to use our powers alone. If my psychokinesis wasn't working, it meant that there was no one here. Also, getting a clearer view on the other side of these walls, there is no, maybe these are the more expensive seats, if seats they are, the balconies or anything. Yeah, little more minimalistic and far less flamboyant than the ones you would find in most theaters, but I digress. But I still kept my guard up as I walked toward the stage. If I remembered right, this place hadn't changed since the last time I was here. Come to think of it, if I'd come here to celebrate my acceptance to Hikariwo Academy, it had only been 2.5 years since I'd last been here. It didn't seem real. It felt like so much more time had passed. Everything had changed. Nano and Yui were gone. Yuto probably left his home and was on his way to Akihabara with Shinjo right now. And Sakuma. And a sudden noise. Don't like that. Suddenly I heard a sound behind me and spun around. Standing there was... Serika Inoue.
お前
She looked just like she had when I'd seen her this morning. Not only was she not hurt, there were no signs that she'd even fought. Serika waited for the door she'd come through to close, then slowly walked toward me. Really not liking this.
なぜここにいる?
You couldn't go through with it. Her voice was quiet but angry. She probably thought that I'd left Shibuya.
父さんは
You still calling Sakuma that?
死んだよ。
Somehow I don't believe you.
Huh?
Before Takuru.
舞台裏に頭だけ転がっている。半分潰れていて分かりにくいがな。
Still finding that very convenient. The look on my face must have been ridiculous. Serika's voice was completely calm, and it was hard to believe she was lying. But remember what Mio and Hanai said. Dad was dead. I'm not buying that.
お前が殺したのか
Her nod silently said, "Of course I did."
それで、
Or so you say.
なぜここにいるんだ? 久野里美桜たちはどうした?
Can't bring himself to say that they're already heading to Akihabara as we speak. How could she be so calm after killing someone? It was terrifying to see how unconcerned she was. My thoughts, feelings, and even my words were a jumbled mess. But I managed to tell her that Shinjo had taken them all out of Shibuya by now. And then I told her why I'd come.
お前どうして電話であんなこと言ったんだよ 僕に何を望まれて生まれてきたんだよ
Answer the question, Serika. Serika looked at me as if she was staring at something very dear to her. I knew this feeling. Serika was reading my mind. Yeah, gonna be honest, not liking this sudden change of expression. This expression is even more terrifying than the blank one. And also, yeah, I forgot. Telepathy. So we can't hide anything from her. She knows that everyone else is already on their way to Akihabara as we speak. Yeah, and she's manifested her own D-sword. Suddenly it appeared. Its design was far too complicated and intricate to be called a sword. It was sharp like metal, but it had a strange luster to it that was all its own. It was a D-sword, big enough to cover Serika's entire upper body. It was what she used to kill Nono. And the fact that she's drawing it now bodes ill indeed.
お前はクノサとミオたちと逃げるべきだったんだ。宮代タクル。
Well, it's too late now. Beyond her blade, I could see a slight change in her expression.
お前
Too late to be surprised now. It was the same look I'd seen before when she was talking about Sakuma. As if she hated everything she saw. Just as she jumped, I felt a burning heat in my right shoulder and fell to the ground. A moment later, I felt a pain like nothing that I'd ever experienced before. Didn't even have any time to dodge. I grabbed my shoulder with my left hand and felt something nasty, warm and sticky. It was blood. I'd been cut. If I'd reacted even a moment later, she would have chopped my entire shoulder off. I looked up. Serika was already bringing her blade down. I'm gonna get out of the way first. I forced myself to twist out of the way, ignoring the blood spurting from my shoulder. This time the pain was in my left leg. I ignored it too, trying my best to get away. Well, we're off to a completely fantastic start. Serika walked over to me slowly. I must have bit something in my mouth when I rolled, because I tasted something bitter and metallic.
なんで
手遅れだった。私が委員会を甘く見ていた。
Serika stopped, close enough to strike me with her D-sword, and began to speak.
佐久間に代わる人間がもう私に接触してきた。すでに逃げ場はない。
Someone involved with Sakuma.
お前を生かし続けることはできない。
And yet another promise that has been broken
お
and
前を
shattered to pieces.
これまでの事件の被害者のようにはさせたくないんだ。
No way. That's why she was going to kill me? Just like she killed Nono with that D-sword. Yeah, pretty much. The pain from the cuts kept me thinking, and the blood loss drained away my will to resist. Sorry, kept me from thinking. I couldn't feel my left leg anymore, but I couldn't stop looking at Serika. I wasn't sure. Were there any important blood vessels around the calves? Probably quite a few. In fact, I would say that they're all very important.
私もすぐに行く。向こうで話そう。
I don't think we can. Serika swung the D-sword at me. And again, that ominous feeling. And then I felt something burst within me. That wasn't Serika. Definitely not Serika. I leapt at Serika. I reached out my hand without thinking and felt something warm and rough. I heard her scream in my ears. Takuru's not himself. By the time I'd realized I'd reached into the cut in her stomach and ripped out the stitches, I was already on top of her. Her D-sword had disappeared. Also, don't think I didn't see that pattern there flashing on the red background. That was definitely the 11th Rorschach, the sumo sticker. Yeah, I saw that. My hand went for her neck. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Takuru is being mind-controlled. Just as Serika was. My fingers dug into her flesh. The only thing I saw was the red color dripping down the base of her neck. Was it my blood from when she cut my shoulder, or hers when I ripped open her stomach, or had my nails broken the skin on her neck? Whatever it was red, and it was spreading. I couldn't stop myself from gripping tighter. My fingers dug deeper and deeper, and the soft sensation of her skin began to recede. Instead, I felt thick muscle and hard bone. Takuru, I think we've been played. We've been played, alright. When it was all over, the pain in my leg and shoulder were gone. No, it was still there, but it didn't feel like my own pain. It was like I was watching myself on top of Serika from a distance. But when I took my hands off her neck, that feeling disappeared, and everything else came flooding back. Serika's eyes had rolled up into her head and her tongue was sticking out of her mouth. I felt an unpleasant wetness in my underwear. It was her blood from where I'd sat on her. The blood was pouring out from the gash in her stomach. Serika wasn't moving anymore. Did I kill her? Did I strangle her to death? I suddenly felt the urge to vomit. Why? What was I doing on top of Serika? Why were my hands covered in blood? And it's only gonna get worse. My head hurt. My field of vision was red. My heart was pounding hard, and under me was the body of the girl I'd created. I cradled my head in my bloody hands. It hurt so much it felt like it was going to burst. My eyes hurt too. Everything was turning red. And then a white light. Suddenly my vision cleared. The lights above the stage seemed impossibly bright, like the sun at the end of the tunnel. There was a pain in my eyes. I reached up my hand, and my fingers were covered in pink tears. And then I realized Serika wasn't here. My fingers weren't covered in blood. Yeah, that was a delusion. I twisted my neck to look at my shoulder. My clothes weren't even cut. There wasn't a single wound on my leg either. Yep, everything that happened wasn't real. What was going on? I was sitting on the ground, alone, by the seats near the entrance.
ひでえやつだな。そんな男に育てた覚えはねえぞ。
Oh, fuck you too, Wataru Sakuma. Also hi. I leapt up to my feet. Lo and behold, the Grand Maestro himself. There he is.
父さん。
And he has some kind of apparatus. Dad was up on the stage. He was standing in the center like the lead singer at a musical. And at his feet, yeah.
お前。
Serika, the girl I thought I just killed, was lying at his feet. There was no blood on her clothes, and the cut on her stomach hadn't been torn open. But she must have been unconscious because she wasn't moving. Yeah, I knew something was off.
こいつは妄想の前に殺されそうになっても一切抵抗しなかったぞ。いじらしいじゃないか。
Cute is not how I would describe it, Wataru. I suddenly understood what was going on. Mind control. But when? Probably from the moment we arrived.
まさか劇場に入った時にはもう
That would be a safe bet. When I came inside, I felt a sharp pain and my vision had blurred for a moment. When I tested my powers with the lollipop, was I already under his spell? The pain and heat had felt so real, but it was all an illusion. But I could still feel the sensation of wringing Serika's neck.
あのままこの子に殺されてりゃ、お前のここも壊れてたはずなんだがな。
Also, that apparatus on your head suggests to me, as well as what's on your back as well, suggests to me that that you are no true gigalomaniac, but somebody who has managed to harness the power of gigalomaniacs through artificial means. Dad tapped his own heart.
逆に殺しちまうってのはどうだよ、タクル。女に手を挙げる男はモテねえぞ。
You're one to talk. Hearing Sakuma talk in the same tone he always did was almost enough to get me to let my guard down. But this wasn't the man I knew. The man on the stage wasn't the dad I knew. Indeed, this is the real Wataru Sakuma.
あの木か。
Very good question. I took a good look at it. Sakuma was holding some kind of backpack, and I could see some kind of device inside.
何を背負ってるんだ。
Sakuma was wearing a piece of headgear that connected to it. This little coily wire here. And the long cylindrical machine he was holding was connected to it by a cord.
そうか。
Yeah, there is something here as well. Just off the screen. If he had psychic powers like we did, then he'd have to have one too. Oh, and he does. This was Sakuma's D-sword. Okay then, that thing about phony gigalomaniac, they're gonna have to take that back. You can't be a fake if you actually have a D-sword of your own, even if it is a delusion. Why did he have it? I thought that those powers only appeared in brains that were still developing during the earthquake. No, Takuru, there were gigalomaniacs long before the Shibuya earthquake.
これまでの研究によれば、脳がまだ発達段階で活発に活動している若い人間。その中でも脳への負荷が非常に高い事象を経験した者だけに能力の発現が見られる。
That's what Kurusu said.
ああ、これか。
Sakuma saw what I was looking at, even though that's completely typoed, and tapped his backpack with the D-sword.
すげえだろ。俺たちの研究成果の一つさ。俺みたいな普通の人間でもギガロマニアックスと似たような能力が持てる。
Okay, once again, you know, that thing that I took back, gonna take it back again. He is a fake, phony gigalomaniac.
こいつはある装置の端末でな。その装置ってのは以前ここにあったんだが、ちょっとトラブっちまって。おかげであの地震だ。ひでえ目にあった。
First of all, Genishi Narose used Noah 2 to cause that earthquake. It wasn't an accident. And second of all, Noatu was destroyed by Takumi Nishijo along with Ganeshi Narose. So how did you rebuild it? Sakuma sounded like a child whose favorite toy had been broken. It was clear he didn't care at all about the people who died or whose lives had been ruined during the earthquake.
そのせいで俺らもリストラされちまうしよ。金もね、人もいねえで、組み立て直すのに6年もかかっちまった。
So you spent the last 6 years rebuilding Noah too, did you?
いいんかいのバカども。
So that's how he was able to do that to Ito. And how he'd been able to kill Yui. I felt a mixture of rage, sorrow, and hatred. All those feelings were so strong that I wanted to scream. All those negative emotions.
はい、お前のことを何とかすりゃ、また研究に戻れるからな。
That's if the committee will let you, but here's a thought. Has the committee even paid attention, 1 iota of attention, to everything that you've done over the past 2 months? It was as if he was picking just the right words to make me even angrier.
正直、ちょっと焦ったぜ。あのようなやつ、一人でここへ来やがったからよ。お前が来なきゃ話にならねえし、めんどくせえことになったと思ってたんだが。
He looked down at her and poked her with the artificial D sword. She still didn't move. It couldn't be. Was Serika...
ん？死んでるぞ。当然だろう。
Funny, ain't it, he seemed to say.
思考誘導をかけられて妄想の中で戦わされてるって気づいたんだな、こいつ。最後、ディソードを引っ込めて、お前に殺される瞬間まで抵抗一つしなかった。どこまでお前のことが大事なんだか。
God damn it. He kicked her hard enough that she turned over.
やめろ。
それにしてもお前すごかったな。ノノを殺された恨みに取りつかれてるからよ。それをちっとブーストしてやったんだ。そしたら情けも容赦もなくぶっ殺したもんな。お前もどこまでノノが大事なんだか。
Do not speak her name, Sakuma. I could feel my whole body getting hot. Stop it. Don't say Nono's name. Not with that face. Not with that voice.
何考えてんだよ。
ああ
？The way Sakuma's expression didn't change at all only made me madder. Did he really not understand? We'd all lived together for years, right? We'd come here as a family, hadn't we?
ユウトとウキはいなくなったあんたのことを心配してる。
お、なんだ。お前まだあいつらに言ってなかったのかよ。
Of course not.
ユイだってずっとあんたを信頼してた。それに。
It is no easy thing to know that somebody isn't who you thought they were. And no.
きっかけはタクルのリハビリの手伝いをしていた時に父さんに言われた言葉。独学なのにやるじゃないか、なかなかだぞという一言でした。きっと父親というのはそういうものなんでしょう。父さんが作った家のルール、私は好きでした。ありがとう。
Yeah, those rules. No secrets. No secrets allowed, he said.
くれぐれも飲みすぎには注意してください。
Kurusu believed in you until the very
信じ
end.
てたんだ。大切な家族だって。なのに何考えてたよ。
My words echoed off the walls of the theater and came back to me again and again. And then I realized that I was the same way. I believed in Sakuma too from the bottom of my heart. But he... was nothing more than a miserable piece of shit. Sakuma chuckled and scratched his head like I'd seen him do many times before. It was the same thing he'd done when Nono was scolding him at home.
タクルよ、お前なんか楽しいことってあるか？
は？
なんかあんだろう、面白いと思うこと。それがなきゃ人間なんてやってらんねえだろうが。
It's exactly as Serika had said to Kuru. What was he talking about? That wasn't what I'd asked.
なんでユイを殺した？ノノを殺した？
ユイをやったのはお前の友達だし、ノノをやったのはこいつだろうがよ。
うるさい！
おお、怖え。
You manipulated them both. What the hell was so funny? I clenched my hands into fists, my grip so tight in my rage that my nails dug into my skin.
あんたどうしてこんなことできるんだ？おかしいだろ。
No, it doesn't. Not to normal people, but Wataru Sakuma, as Serika so eloquently pointed out before, is anything but normal.
何怒るなって。今言ったろ？楽しまなきゃダメだ。
What the hell does that mean, though?
俺はな、お前に期待してたんだよ。人間一人リアルブートしちまうくらいぶっ壊れてたからな。どこまでいけるか、どこまで震えるか楽しみにしてた。
あ？
お前みてえなギガロマニアックスが好きなことを好きなだけやるようになったら本当にすげえんだぜ。この世界すらめちゃくちゃにできちまう。面白い。たまんねえ。それを観測して計算して理論を組んでまた実験して、そのループの先にどんなもんが現れるのか俺は見てみてえな。ワクワクしねえか、タクル。
You know, I might have said this before in a previous episode, but you remind me of a certain person from a different visual novel series, Wataru Sakuma. Of course, I won't spoil it here and now. Although, minor spoiler warning, I didn't like that person either. Sakuma kept using the same voice he always used at home. But I wasn't hearing a word. The anger inside me just kept building, and unfortunately, Takuru, that is exactly what Sakuma wants. It is what he is trying to get out of all this after all.
とにかくよ、どんな時でも自分が面白いと思うことに従っとけ。これは父親代わりの人生訓ってやつだ。
父親だと？あんたなんか父親じゃない！
I screamed. But Sakuma kept smiling.
とにかくな、俺にとっちゃギガロマニアックス研究は最高だ。こんなに楽しいこと他に存在しねえ。これがお前の質問への答えだ。
In other words, Sakuma is a complete sociopath. Plain and simple.
そんな。
That was the only reason. The only reason he worked for the committee. The only reason he'd done all those horrible experiments in the basement.
ユイやノノや伊藤たちをあんな目に遭わせたの。それだけのために。
だから何回言ったらわかんだよ。面白いだろ、その方が。
Yeah. In other words, to Sakuma, sadism and tragedy are his only entertainment.
お前！
The next thing I knew, I was running. The D-sword appeared in my hand instantly. It had no weight, but I could feel it was there. Also, it's a very different color. Remember that it was a blue before, but now it is sort of like a pinkish purple. That signifies that the sword is now rebooted. I listened to the blades roar as I ran down the corridor. And swung it upward at the bastard on the stage.
Oh?
There was a high-pitched noise and a brilliant light, and I stopped. My hand went numb for a second. Of course it blocked it. The mechanical D-sword had blocked my swing.
ほらよ。
Sakuma's muscles bulged like thick ropes as he swung his giant D-sword down at me. Now, a little bit of a strategy tip here, Takuru. Sakuma won't be laughing so much once his little artificial toy is broken. If we can get to it, that is. Barely managed to block it, but the impact knocked me back into the front row seats. There was a sharp pain in my arm. It had been cut a little. It was a delusion before, but this time real blood was running down my arm.
おいおい、お前の腕力で俺とチャンバラする気か?
Pretty much. Sakuma didn't move a step. He raised the giant D-sword onto his shoulders. His huge body was at least 185 centimeters tall, and he towered over me from the stage like a wall.
ま、たまには息子と遊んでやるか。娘ばっかり相手にしてちゃかわいそうだしな。ほら、こっちに来いよ。観客がしたい一つってのは物足りないけどな。
Don't you dare, Sakuma. Don't you freaking dare. Don't you do this. Then he kicked Serika's unmoving body once more. I felt anger, but also an indescribable despair. What was I doing here? I come to find out the truth from Serika. Instead, that I killed her myself. There was no reason for me to be here anymore. So didn't that mean there was no reason to try and fight Sakuma? No, it wouldn't even be a fight. I'd probably just get myself killed. So maybe you can't retreat now. It's too late for that. When Serika had cut my leg open my leg before, it had only been an illusion. I could run to the exit. If I caught him off guard, I could escape, maybe. But we'd be turning our back. I went forward. I hadn't done any real exercise since my physical therapy 6 years ago. A vision of Nono and Yui flashed through my mind. And for some reason, I saw Serika smiling. Like she used to do when we were in the newspaper club.
どうした?早く舞台に上がれ。客が退屈してるぞ。
When I looked at him, I suddenly had an idea in the corner of my mind. I remembered what he'd said. That the machine on his back was what gave him his power. That he was an artificial gigalomaniac. Then what if I could get rid of that machine? Well, he would be at a huge disadvantage, obviously. But then, the question is, can we get rid of it?
やれるかもしれない。
If we can bait him off guard.
やるんだ。
Yeah, we have no choice. We need to disable that machine pronto. I stood and climbed up onto the stage. The light shone down upon my head. I could hear a non-existent crowd screaming for my death from the empty seats. I readied the D-sword. My hand still felt a little numb.
おお、主役っぽいぞ、タクル。それでいい。
I took a step to the side, trying to look as natural as possible. Unfortunately, getting behind him while he's looking at us is easier said than done.
あいつがあのままの姿勢でディソードを使うなら。
By moving to the side, I was able to see part of the device on his back. I hit him with my power as hard as I could. Sakuma heard a noise behind him and turned around. I had a clear view of the machine.
そこだ。
I concentrated harder and hit him with more of my power. Yeah, what are you gonna do about it? Oh yeah, giant D-sword. Sakuma howled like a wild animal and swung his D-sword. But I didn't stop. As long as I can destroy that machine. Unfortunately. I was afraid of this. I was afraid of this.
Huh?
Yeah. You only had one chance, Takuru. I had to say it. But you kinda blew it. So that is going to bring an end to this episode of Let's Play Chaos Child, and when we return, I think Sakuma is going to dish out the hurt. And it's going to be very painful. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.